It's Rachel Haskins with Ideally Crazy, and today I have my special guest.
Beverly Haskins.
Yes, this is some of you may know her as Sister Beverly Haskins, Ms. Beverly Haskins. Her family sometimes calls her Mickey, but I know her as Mama. So this is my mother, Beverly Haskins, and I wanted to have her on the show because I always say that Ideally Crazy is about seeing yourself through God's eyes. So, and what does that mean? It means that God sees you, He loves you no matter what. He knew what He formed when He created you, and He said that you are good. And so, some of the people that helped me see myself through God's eyes, of course, were the first people that I came into interaction with. And one of those people, of course, is my mother. I always talk about, you guys know I'm a daddy's girl, and I always talk about my dad. But and I also mentioned the role that my mother plays. So I always like to give special spotlights because in my family everybody had a role and everybody played their position. And so what does that mean? Of course, my mother. I told you guys that my mother was able to stay home with us for a while. Um, when we were little, like from the time we were born until we were well off into grade school. And so that was a person who was, educating us. My mother at first was an educator, a teacher, and then she went back to school to become a therapist. And so she always would work with us on school things and different things like that. And one of the things, I always say that I'm a lot like my mother when it comes to being supportive of my family and what type of mother that I want to be. I always say that she was a PTA mom. She's going to show up to all the events, but I never really told you guys why. So my mother put me in a traditional school, my elementary school. It was called Audubon Traditional Elementary. Well, when I went to Audubon, it was, us as people of color, and, my audience is every, nationality, but people of color a lot of times experience racism in everything that we go to. And so one reason my mom got so involved is not only that when I got into the school, she noticed that there was a lot of racism, and so she knew that she was going to have to be a dominant figure and show up, and not just for me, for all the other black students. Because what I love about my mother, she's always been a helping hand. Like, she realizes that everybody is not as blessed as she had been and been able to have the time and the availability and the capacity to go up to the school, participate, be on the PTA, and my mother was in boards outside of school. That's where she met a good friend who helped her go back to school by just wanting to be a help to people in her community, and she knew that she had to do that by being present. But that's a little bit of what I always like to let people tell you a little bit of their story. So I'll let my mom tell you a little bit about herself.
Well, I'm Beverly Haskins, and I was a stay-at-home mom. My field in the beginning was just a lot of clerical work. I worked for the government and stuff like that. And I retired from the Census Bureau when I was carrying Rachel. And I stayed home with Rachel. And my husband and I had talked because we didn't want her in the public's eye. We wanted to mold her and shape her in the home life and give her the experience of the home life. I didn't entrust my children with a lot of outside people. Family, yes, but not a lot of outside people. So we wanted to be the first of a lot of things, and that's the reason. That was my reason for staying home with both my children, and that way I could experience all the things. Their first crawling, their first walking, first getting teeth in their mouth, and just everything. I enjoy being a stay home mom, and planning and taking care of my family.
Yes, and it was a blessing to have. Like sometimes now growing up, especially being like a single mom, and when I say that, my son's father has always been his life. My daughter's father, he always did what he could, but you guys know that right now he can't. But sometimes you don't know what a blessing that you had and what gifts God gave you until you have to do it you have to do it in that position. And what I mean by that, like being a mother, seeing like how precious it is. One reason why I don't make any excuses about showing up for my kids is because my parents have always shown up for me. My mother has always made sure that like she's a part of our lives and she's a part of our upbringing, whether it's at school or it's in church, just as much as I mean, even more honestly, just as much as she worked in the school system, she also worked at church. So if we was in children's church, like we would go to the national conventions. If we were in children's church, she was in children's church working and being a part of that ministry. And so just her being an example of that made me, there's no excuses, even though, I might have a little bit more responsibility on me. I understood the importance of being a mother and being not only being a mother but being a present mother and being an active mother because of how she raised us and how she walked in her gift, because it's a gift to want to do that. Some people don't want to do it. Some people don't know to do it. Some people just don't have the capacity to do it, and some people, they just don't see the point in it. But being a child that was able to have my mother there when I needed her, it definitely played a role into what type of mother I wanted to be. Not just that, like she said, I'm real particular about where my kids go. I never got to spend the night. I think like my friends could come over and they could spend a night at my house, but I could not spend a night nowhere else. So I always used to have a whole lot of kids in my house, like especially when my son was growing up. But that was because I really didn't let them go places. You could come here because I know what's going on in my house. And then even with my daughter, when she would have birthday parties and sleepovers and stuff like that, I would always let the parents know, hey, this is a safe space. You don't have to worry about her being around. You don't have to worry about your child being around this, that, and the other, because we're not having that. Not only that, my mother was a very watchful mother. You know what I'm saying? Like some people, the kids in the house and they ain't studying them. They not looking for them. They letting them do whatever they want to do, honey. My mother was gonna be checking in every few minutes. She was checking in with us, and so just even with that, because one of my guests has said you got to watch kids around other kids, and you absolutely do. So even with birthday parties, I remember my daughter had this sleepover, and it was like 17 girls, and me and my best friend were there, and we were going up the steps, come down the steps, all night long. Because birthday parties for me was never a place of rest, because you got to watch these kids. And honestly, I did catch something that wasn't supposed to happen, about to happen. I was able to stop that. But where did I get that from? My mother. We don't just let kids just wander. We keep an eye on our kids. And even that people are going to do what they want to do. Kids are kids and they're going to do what they want to do. But it definitely decreases the risk if you do what you're supposed to do. And so I thank God for different things like that, lessons like that, when it comes to children, because like I said, children have always been a priority in our life, not just our own. Like I said, my mother, even after we graduated school, my mother still, was going to parent teacher little meetings and stuff like that, and community meetings where it was talking about helping our children and making sure that they had the resources they had. She's ran summer camps at the church, targeted at our youth and helping them to learn and giving their parents a safe place for them to go and learn and be able to be social, because kids do need socialization. And so you guys know that I don't take long. I hop right into my questions. So the first question is, what has been the most meaningful part of being a mother to me and my sibling, and what lessons did you hope to pass down?
Well, the what has been the most meaningful lessons it is first that Christ would be in your life and that y'all would be successful. But I felt like without Christ there is no success. and that y'all would be kind to people and pick up some of the things that I picked up. I just wanted y'all to be people that love people and love to help people, because I love helping people. I want to say that one of the things that there's a young lady named Dr. Bonnie Marshall that was very helpful when Rachel was talking about her experience at Audubon. She started a group called the Voice for Our Children, and this was for parents in the community to be able to help their children and other people's children to succeed and go through the things that they would do in class. Rachel was always very intelligent and very outspoken, and her teacher said some things that was not nice when she was 6 years old, and Dr. Marcia came into our lives to help us. And not only would they go with you, they would go with you to the school, and they would talk for you in the meeting, and they would help you. And to make sure that we would stick with the point that we came there for. Actually, Rachel did finish at Audubon. And so even with the different complications she had in her first year, we won't forget her teacher or the teacher's first name. And I won't call her name, but it was an experience at Audubon for a lot of people of color.
Absolutely. One thing I'll say is this: Dr. Bonnie Marshall has been a true friend, not only to my mother, but that's what I love about friends. When friends love everything and they gonna help you with everything that you have. So Dr. Barney Marshall not only has helped my mother with me, she's helped me with my son. When my son went to K-State, she literally went down there, talked to like a couple of the heads of the departments, the heads of the departments in which he wanted to major in, and told him about my son, told him to look out for him and to keep out for him. So, and then put in a good word. And when she went down there, she was coming with scholarship money. But, some people would have just gave you the check and went on. She drove down there herself personally, and was able to meet with the head of the department and tell them about Tiz. And so just having favor with people. I always say what I've learned from my mother's walk in Christ is that just let your intention and your heart be right. God will send you the people that you need and the resources you need to accomplish my mission. One thing I laugh sometimes, even today, my mama didn't really feel like doing the interview, but I laughed because I said, if sometimes she doesn't see me in her, but I'm like, I'm just like her. Like when we want something, we gon' have it, and we don't stop till we get it. One thing I love that my mother tells me, and I'll tell a lot of my friends when I say my friends, my coworkers and my friends, because a lot of times your coworkers end up being your friends, and they'll be scared to ask for stuff. I'll be like, my mom always has, all they can say is no. So, and that's what the Bible says. So the Bible says, seek, ask. You have not because you ask not. Don't be too prideful to ask. That's another place where humility comes in. Admit in areas that you need help. I always say I don't have to be the biggest person or the smartest person. I need somebody to help me. I'm always, running toward wisdom and running toward learning things. But I know that God has resources for me, and one reason I know that is from my mom, because I've literally watched her my entire life. I mean, everything that she's done. From now, she's a district missionary, and so even when it comes to collecting funds for the church, she's asking, she's doing, and that's the only real way to get the things that you want in life, is because people don't know what you want, and everybody's living their life, and sometimes they don't even think about you, and they don't mean it in a harmful way, but you have to ask for what you want, and God will send. And when your intentions and your heart is in the right place, God would definitely send the necessary resources and the people that you need to get those things done. And so sister Dr. Bonnie Marshall has been one of those people that God has sent into, I say my mom's life, but all of our life. It started with me but it didn't end with me. And that's how you know when God sends certain people in your life. It doesn't end just there. She's been there for every single. I've never called her about anybody. Like if I'm trying to help, a lot of times when I call Dr. Barney Marshall, I'm trying to help somebody. Like from my friends' kids. I remember my best friend said that one time she was talking to Dr. Bonnie Marshall. And she had seen her somewhere and she wanted to ask her about something. She said, but she was so busy that she didn't want, my best friend had walked up on her, but she seen she was busy, so she didn't really want to bother. And she said, right when she was about to like walk away, because when you're a person that has a lot on you, you understand what it looks like when you have a lot on. And she said she was like, she was even on the phone, people was all around. She was like, come on back. You know what I'm saying? Because if anything that she can do to help you, she's going to do to help you. And I love that about Dr. Barney Marshall. But what I also notice is about people like that normally link. My mother's like it. Anything that she can do to help you, she's gonna do to help you. And I kid you not. If she knows somebody, I said on one of my shows that my mama likes to be a person that knows somebody. So that's why I said leave your business cards when you come over here, because my mother likes to be of service. We live a life not just for my dad, but my dad married a woman and they raised their children to be people of that we live a life of service. And we do believe that's what God wants us to do. Yes, God blesses us, but he don't just bless you just for to stop right there. My mother is a giver. If you want to know where my giving comes from, my mother is a giver. She is always thinking, and when I say that, it's in the form of finances, it's in the form of prayers, and it's in the form of help. It's just whatever she has, whatever God gives her, she always wants to give back. And so I thank God for having an example in front of me that taught me that a lot of women didn't. When you get older, a lot of times when you're growing up, you don't notice the difference between your mama and somebody else. Are you not really looking for those differences? But you get to see what a blessing it is to have your particular mother, because I've watched friends who had mothers that were liars and kept up a lot of mess. And I got to see where, how it ended, and it never ended well. And so, but I didn't have a mother like that. I had a mother that had integrity. Um, and a mother who had a heart that was in the right place. And so, I'm not gonna lie, I had a head start, because sometimes you have to unlearn unchristian behavior. But as far as that went, I already had a good example of what to be and how God wanted us to be. And like she said, the best gift that she and my father gave us was Christ. And so I always say, no matter where I go, that's my boss. That's who I'm trying to impress. I'm not trying to impress man. I'm trying to impress God. I want him to be satisfied. I want, when it's time for us to meet, that he says, well done, my good and faithful service. And even with that thought, I get that from my mother. She was, she'll say a lot of times, she said, none of us are perfect, but she always, like, as far as she's concerned, she said, I don't want to do anything that will separate me from Christ. And so I always believe that was really honorable. Can I say I'm there yet? No, I don't want to. But I don't want to. But do I sometimes do things that possibly separate me from Christ? Absolutely. But I'm working and I'm coming up to that point where, I'm doing less and less of that every day. Okay, so we're good. Go ahead, Bob.
I wanted to say Dr. Marsha was like a mentor to me, and also Diane Porter. When I was in high school at Louisville Male High School, Diane Porter, that used to sit on the board, she was my teacher in accounting, and she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and she began to work with me and allow me to work in the classroom. And I had another teacher named Olivia Hanley that was in algebra. And she was known as really a hard teacher. But with algebra, if you were in her class, you were going to get it or you was going to fail. And these people also sat on the voice for our children and would fight in the community for each child. They knew the things that our children were going through, and they worked, tirelessly, just trying to help the children in the community to get where they needed to be and to be successful. And like she was talking about education, they still do all they can to have children in education. If you just put your child's name in their ear, they'll do things to help. And I like that. And the thing about it, they don't look for, no pat on the back or anything. It's just normal for them to do that, to love children enough to want them to succeed. And that's the way I feel. I want every child to succeed. And I want every child to be successful. And so that's what I said. So if you get them in the right hands, like I said, Rachel was 6 when she met Dr. Marsha. And then I had Miss Carter that we started with Miss Carter in a tutoring program. And this was a retired teacher. And she was an old lady, and she was known in her community and everything. And she began to tutor Rachel when she was 6 years old, and Bonnie would do some things. And not only that, Nathan started going to her when he was 3 years old. And so it was him and another little young man named Jameson Mandela. And between the two of them, they were little bitty 3 years old, but they were busy 3 years old, but they were also smart 3 years old because Miss Carter worked with them. And where the teacher, Mrs. Little, was saying that Rachel couldn't come up, she came up and she succeeded over.
Absolutely. How dare I miss honoring Miss Carter? And the reason why Miss Carter is a huge blessing and just a monument in my life is Miss Carter is the first person to work with me on my oratorical speaking. And one thing Miss Carter would always tell me, she said, speak slow enough to be heard, to be understood, speak loud enough to be heard, and slow enough to be understood. And so she was the first person that started working with me in my gift as a little girl and telling me how to present myself. And did it work? It absolutely worked. Like I said, I was able to travel and compete in national competitions when it came to oratorical speaking. I was able to not just, and that was in the, in my school atmosphere, but even in the church, I was able to have opportunities just from speaking, where I was able to welcome my national bishop from doing oratorical. And it was something that I loved. And it's, as a kid, I wasn't a kid that was good at sports. So it's always so like it's fun and it's exciting when you find what it is that you're good at. And so I found what my talent was, and then people like Miss Carter helped develop it, and she was the sweetest old lady that I've ever met. She and the way not only that the way that she not just poured into me, that she poured into every child that was underneath her. A lot of the people that I know till this day, I one of the first places I met them was at Miss Carter's house. She would tutor us in her basement, and it was a safe place. We were loved. We were treated well. Not only that, she told us what we were. She taught us how to hold our heads up. And it's important to input those type of characteristics in children at a young age, because life is going to be constantly combating. Like she said, the first time that somebody spoke negatively of me was not when I was 15 years old. It was when I was 6 years old. And I remember that teacher. Her name was Miss Little. And Miss Little was a racist teacher. I remember one of the things she said about me was that I cried so loud that they could hear me in Audubon Parkway. And I remember I was never allowed to talk back to adults, but I remember thinking, she's such a liar. That's impossible. Because at that time I didn't really understand, how people worked sometimes. But that's one thing. That's another reason why I always say you'll never hear me like talk down to a child or put a child down where I'm saying you ain't gonna be nothing, or you not smart, or you can't keep up. Because as a 6-year-old child, I knew what that felt like, and I decided that I would never make anybody feel that way. So I am a builder. I'll say some things. I always say that when I listened to Bishop T.D. Jakes, a lot of what you went through, if you let God use you, will turn you into the person that you're supposed to be. Because I was treated that way, I never wanted anybody else to be treated that way. And so I always, even with my mom, like my mom said, we are builders of children. We believe in them. So I'm going to always speak to them. What they say, I'm going to speak to the God in them. I'm going to speak to the king and the queen in them, because that's what they are. And that doesn't have a race on me. Black, white, Puerto Rican, it don't matter. Children are special. They're special to God and they're special to us. And I would never mistreat any child because of that. But like I said, I was 6 years old, and had I not had my mother, think about how many people don't have that person. All they have is that teacher, that racist teacher, telling them what they're not going to be, or what they can't do, or that they can't keep up. And a lot of times, this is another thing I want to say real quickly. A lot of times when somebody is telling you what you're not and what you can't do, that's exactly the thing that you are. So if somebody is telling you that you're not intelligent, guess what you are? You're probably really, really smart. And I am. A lot of times people don't like to hear you talk well of yourself, but I do, because you speak back against those things that were said about you. My life over to this point has proven that I'm a very intelligent person. I learn really easily, and I love to learn. Not only that, God has gifted me with two children that are very intelligent and they do very well. And so I thank God for that. And I thank God for having people like my mother, Dr. Bonnie Marshall, Miss Carter, and other great women like that spoke into me, and called what God had into me out, and so that I could walk in my purpose. Because God doesn't put anybody in your life that you won't need. So we're gonna go on to the next. Do you want to say something else?
Yeah, what I wanted to say is that I would do everything that I knew to help in tutoring and working with my children. But Miss Carter, at a little age, and Rachel was small in stature, and Miss Carter, she took up with my children like they was hers, and she spoke into her life, and with this little bitty person
Little be your girl.
with so much coming out of Miss Carter says she has a gift. And the oratorical, like she said, it led different places. But Miss Carter, as a senior teacher and a retired teacher, she spoke both into both of my children's life. But Rachel, she just knew that she said she's going to do well, and she did do well. And speaking is not an issue with her at all.
That's one thing about it. I always say, even that my mother she's a therapist, and she, when done right, she allowed us to express ourselves. And so I'm really good. I don't have to do no underhanded stuff. I don't do no sneaky stuff. I'm not a person that plays internet games. If I got a problem with you, I'm gonna tell you, and we gonna get and either we gonna get it clear or we not. But I get that from my mother. She's never been the sneaky and underhanded type of person. If there's an issue, we gonna come to you about it, and that's all it is. It ain't gonna be nothing after that, because we are women of integrity and of honor. But as a family and marriage therapist, what are some of the most important insights you've gained about love, communication, and healing within families?
Well, I have my MS in marriage and family therapy, and I've learned a lot. I was a mental health professional at the jail, and it really schooled me on a lot of things. And so, one of the things is to not put a blame on anyone. Never, in other words, sometimes we have respect of persons, and so it gets rid of that respect of persons, because it's not, no one is on the same level or on the same playing ground. So learning that people have different opportunities. I didn't come from a single family. I had my mother and father, and my family were working class people and was considered as middle class, but a lot of things I didn't do without. And so sometimes we judge people on what we had or what we did not have. So one thing I learned is not to judge.
Absolutely.
I learned to consider myself, and I learned to try to help people that really want help. And in therapy I learned to listen. I'm a very good observer, and I do pretty good assessment because I'm not talking, I'm listening. I had a friend say I was always going to have friends. Miss Ella Minor, which was Rachel's first teacher in Head Start, and she really loved my children, and she was my best friend at one time. Well, she's deceased now, but what it is, she did get to see them grow up and everything, and she seen the gift and everything as a Head Start person. But what I learned is, she said to me, she said, "You're gonna always have friends because you're a good listener." And so when you're listening, you have to listen for clarity, but not just for clarity, to understand, is this person wanting help? Or is this person just needing a sounding board? And then once you listen to what a person is saying, then you ask God for direction on how to communicate or do what they're needing to be done. Because sometimes in therapy, you may think it's one issue, but that's not why they came to see you. It's something else. So it's very helpful to listen to what an individual is saying, and then go from there trying to meet the need.
Absolutely. I will say that it has been a benefit having a mother that is a therapist, because I like to analyze things, which means I pretty much like to think about things. I accept my emotions, but I always ask the question why. And so I do get that from my mother. A lot of times when she was in school, we would read her books to her. So, just understanding what was being read in the book, understanding why. And I do feel like it makes me a little bit easier to forgive. One of the things I also like to say is that God, people know the what, God knows the why. And so therapy kind of gets into the why. Why is this person doing this? Why do they feel this way? What are the things in their life that have caused them to be that way? And so what I love about that is it's so easy to, like my mother said, to look at people and judge people and just stop right there. But from her, I got from that because, she's never been, even before she got her master's in family marriage therapy, she's never been a judgmental person. So that's just not who she was anyway. But with her having an education, it pushed her a little bit farther. And like she said, she started asking why. Why, we see what you did, but why is that? Because that's just what nurses say, that's just a symptom. That's not the sickness. And so there's a reason why people are doing, whether it's good or whether it's bad, there's a reason behind that. And so getting down to that reason, and is it something that I can help this person with? Is it something that they're ready to change? Even in friendships, is it something that if somebody's doing something that I don't really care for, if I address it, is it something that they really, are they considering doing something different, or are they just set in their ways? And like my mother said, and being accepted. I am a person of acceptance. It is what it is. I always say that in anything I can, God just help me to accept things for what they are, because people are going to be who they are. And God is not a forceful God. He always gives us the right to choose. And so I don't try to force anybody to change, to be around me, or to even in relationships to be with me. That has to be your choice. And I know that is the spirit of Christ. And it's also, even when it comes to therapy, self-love is one of the biggest things that you can have for yourself, because I can say this is what I want. If it doesn't line up to that, then I don't accept it, because I can't go down in what I want. And this is in all relationships. So I can't go down on what I want and what I need to appease you. We can compromise. I always say that what's good for me should also be good for you. In any relationship, business, friendships, and actual romantic relationships. It's never a take all, and it's never a give all. And so even that way of thinking, has been presented to me from my mother. So a lot of people talk about their foundation. One of my biggest foundations, one of your biggest foundations, is going to be around the people that raised you. So whether that's your mother, it's your father, auntie, how they think, you will, a lot of ways that they think, you will think. Um, and I also believe that every generation is supposed to do better than the other. So one way God does that is my mother always wanted us to have more of the good things, more education, more wisdom, more understanding. She always promoted that. And so God, he even grow, he, even with that, he grows on top of that. My son, he reads some of my mother's psychology books, and he reads so he can understand. And that's important to do. Faith and mission work. How has being a missionary shaped your outlook on life, and what experiences from your mission work stay closest to your heart?
Mission work is helping those that are in need. And I always say Jesus met the needs of the people before he introduced them to the word. And so sometimes we want to skin the fish before we catch the fish. But there are people that are in need and they're hurting. Everybody's need is not the same. And what I found out, there's a lot of hurting people that just needs to get their voice, and to be able to help them get their voice to express the hurting pain, the things that they have gone through in their life. And missions, I used to love visiting the sick, and I love preparing meals for the sick. I love, we have the Christmas tree help at the church, and I like that program because there's some children that are without, and I really like it. I don't have to know a person to help a person. I just need to know the need. And if I can meet the need, I have a desire to meet the needs. We have Hattie Minner that has always gone out of the country to help people. And I'm not the person to go out of the country, but I like helping her go to experience helping the people in poverty and helping them, and then also winning them to Christ. So what it is, when I can meet a need, I really like volunteering. I have volunteered for women coming off the street and other women's program, and I enjoy that because they need someone to open up to, and somebody that's not gonna share what their experience, but where they can be comfortable to share their experiences with you. And I love that. I just love that. And then you can, when the opportunity allows and presents itself, then you can talk to them about Christ. But we want to make sure that we meet the needs of people, and then help them in the way that we can, and then offer Christ to them.
Absolutely. What I heard my mother say is she wants to meet the need, and she wants to meet the need first, and then she wants to introduce Christ to them. And the Bible says first naturally, then spiritually. And so what that pretty much means is, like, if somebody's hungry or they don't have clothes or they don't have a roof over their head, it's kind of hard. We're physical, we're spiritual beings, but right now my physical body has a need. And so my mother will, I've watched her do so much stuff. I can't even list all the things that she's done to help people, from helping them get housing. Clothes ain't nothing. She's always bought clothes for kids. Um, to helping them in any way that she can. And it's not just kids. When I tell you that, she loves children. And so when she sees a need within children, it ain't no stopping her. But even with adults, she's welcomed people in their home when they didn't have any place to stay, or they were in a domestic violence situation and need to get away for a few days, or figure out what the plan was going to be. When I tell you, there has been no end to the measures my mother is willing to go to help not just children, not just women, but absolutely anybody that comes across her path that needs help. And she believes in it. I don't think that that's something somebody can teach you. That's something that God puts into you. And it's part of her makeup, is who she is. Is her first thought is to help people. It's not even herself a lot of time. It's what can she do for somebody. I have to be like, my chill, you need to take care of this first. You need to worry about you. You need to rest. So, I'll be the one that is like, okay, I love that you're being supportive, but you need to rest. You already have this going on. And so I have to be on her and my dad a lot about stuff like that, because if she sees a need, she's going to do whatever it is in her possibility, use her resources to help those people. And only God can put that into somebody. Um, from mission work. Like I like to, you guys know, I like to listen to different speakers. And one person I listen to is Joyce Meyer. And one thing she was saying, I laughed because I think in some cases she kind of reminds me of myself. She tried a lot of things when she was trying to understand what God's calling was for her life, but everything wasn't God's calling. Like my mother said, she'll help finance your trip to go to another country, but that's not her calling to go over there. But her calling is to help. And so, any way, a shape, or form that she can, that's what she's gonna do. And I laugh because sometimes, like I say that to my audience, try something, do something. Nobody's completely clear about what it is God has for them to do. But what happens is you get started doing something. If it don't work and you don't like it, God's not asking you to do a lot of things that you don't like. But the things that you do that you love doing, that have a positive impact on people, he'll give you more and more of that. That's what this is. I say that I haven't had every time. I'm trying to maintain about 2 interviews a week, and God has giving me the people that I need to have those 2 interviews a week. Next week, my parents have to do something with the floor, so we might have to skip a week, but we're right back at it. I told my mother today, I said, today's a good day for you to interview. I said, because, I have somebody scheduled for Saturday, but I want somebody today because this is my off day. And so I try, I'm working around my schedule. I laugh because she was telling, my mother's very lady. Like, she always likes to look her best. And that's where I get that from too. Like, she always dressed me up like a little doll. So it's literally just a part of me to always want to look nice. I have, I can't say I thank God for it, but I'm not the person who's ever showed up to work looking a mess. But my mother has never sent me out the house my whole life. So it's unnatural to me to be that way, because she never kept me that way. And so I always feel a little bit if I don't put my best foot forward. But one of the things she taught me, when you feel your worst, look your best. I'm a little bit older and I'm still working night shift right now. And I felt like I had been hit by a train when I woke up today. I mean, it was a while. I had to jump myself up a little bit, but I laughed. I listened to what my mother was saying. I said, but I went back on what she taught me. So today I put on a little bit of extra eyeshadow and everything. I was like, because I'm tired, but I'm not going to look tired. And so that's what I love about my mother. My mother is caregiving for her mother. So, and my granny's a mess. I love my granny. My granny been showing out, honey. She's supposed to be on hospice care, but honey, she still got the energy of I don't know what. I mean, she be kicking with legs, getting out of. She been giving my mother a run for her money, and the rest of us, but mostly my mama, because my mother is more worried. Me and little mama, we just be laughing. But she's been giving my mother a run for her money. So my mother, as I don't know how many of you out there have been caregivers, but as a caregiver, I definitely understand the load of having to take care of somebody, especially when they're going through dementia. It's like literally having a toddler around. And the thing is, at least with work, I get to come home from it. And so when I'm home, I'm away from it. When they live with you, they always they always here. And so just watching her and God been blessing her to be able to care for her mother has been a blessing over my life, and just learning and watching her do at what she does at every level with everything, do the best she can, and always care and be there when it is needed. And so I have so much respect for my mother because of that. Um, I know one of my first guests, when he had went to prison for a little while, but he started off at the jail. My mother mentioned that she was a mental health person at the jail, and he knew her like he was like my first little boyfriend. So he had been around, but he was always kind of scared of my mama. And so he would watch her, and he said he had so much respect for her because the way that she carried herself, and the integrity that she had. She never, like, she is who she says she is. She treats people like she believes in treating them. He said he would be waiting for somebody to try to cut up with her because he was gonna show it out if they did. But he just had so much respect and honor for my mother just because of that, and that was something I went back and told her that he said, because you never know who's watching you. You don't know who's watching. You don't know what they thinking, but it's always a blessing to come back to hear good news, and that you are literally putting forth, and that your spirit and that your works are producing the fruit of what you of your intentions. And so it was a blessing to hear that, and it definitely was a mark to me to to want to continue to want to be like that. But it was an even more blessing for my mother, because I always say we're very intentional about the people that we want to be. And I get that from my mother. She is, where I say, when nobody's looking, who are you? And so that's what I get from my mother. When nobody's looking, she's still an honorable woman. She's still a woman of integrity. She's still a loving woman. She's still a giving woman. She don't do it for no shows, and that's what I honor about her.
I just wanted to say this. She was asking me to do this interview, and I said, I can't do the interview. My mother was just hollering today. And I said, do you want her hollering in the background? And it's like dealing with a little child and stuff. But I am so happy that the Lord has given me an opportunity to have my mother in there. We never know what to expect. And, when you have parents with dementia, you understand that. But she's been peaceful ever since we started.
God makes a way. You just keep going. That's why I told Mama, that's my granny. She's gonna be. And I told my mother when we saw, I said, I don't worry about stuff I can't do nothing about. She's my granny. She's gonna be here. We gonna believe God and go on. And I get that from her. Even that spirit, I get that from my mother. We gonna believe God and go on. When I tell you it works out every time, it works out every time. I always say that, even, and on that note, people a lot of times they see what God has blessed my family with, and because my dad has been such a hard worker, they always just give him the credit for that. But I will say this, some things my daddy didn't even know to want. You hear me? That's where my mother came in. She believed that he could have this house. She believed that he could have nice things. And so through her belief and her walking in her faith, that's how my father was able to gain more and more. So that's why I did understand about having a partner. I need a partner that believes in me. I need a partner that believes that God wants to blow my mind as he has spoke to me. And my mom, she, you know what I'm saying, she gonna believe. One thing about it, she gonna believe God, and one thing about it, God don't let her down. So I got that from looking at her. But a lot. Not only that, I bought my home. I remember when I first got out of nursing school, I wouldn't, I told the Lord I couldn't really afford a 2-bedroom apartment. I had 2 kids when I graduated, but we had I couldn't afford a 3-bedroom while I was in school, because I went to school like people go to, I went to school 40 hours a week. And I did have a little part-time job, but it was Sally's, and Sally's ain't paying no money. But shout out to Sally's. It was a fun job. It gave me a little something. But after I graduated, I just told the Lord, I said, Lord, if it's not time right now, that's fine. I said, but when you do bless me, give me something to be proud of. And my mother, when I was looking for a place to stay, my mother was like, well, how do you feel about buying a house? And I was like, I said, I would love to buy a house. Like, that would be dope. And so, what is it? 13 years ago, come November the 2nd,